On today's episode of Gathering the Kings. I was in one of our roundtables just this last week, and this was a question that was asked. And so I'm going to use that question to ask you the same. The question that was asked was, are you okay with no longer being addicted to being needed? What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolf, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. Today, I've got Craig Leslie here on the King stage. My brother, Craig. How we doing?
Doing great, Chaz. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. I appreciate guys like you that are in the mode, but flexible humans. We have tried our darndest to get this show recorded a couple times, but here we are, man, and I'm excited. So tell us what kind of business that you got, brother.
Yeah, it's actually happening. So
Yeah.
I've been involved in multiple businesses, but right now I own and run a coffee, tea, and spice company. We have multiple brands. We have San Diego Coffee and then the Bean Coffee Company, which is an all organic line. Mainly sell the San Diego brand wholesale in San Diego. And then the Bean is our e-commerce Amazon D2C brand.
Yeah, I love that. You know, the industry that you're in has only gone up, I feel like.
Yeah.
Highly competitive, but has only gone up. And so I've got some interesting questions, and hopefully you'll be able to give some incredible value to the listeners. We'll get the journey and the story, but my first question is always the same. Craig, I got to know, you don't just build not one, but multiple businesses successfully without having something on the inside that just is screaming pretty loud. I call it a burning desire. Same as Think and Grow Rich. What's yours?
Yeah. I think it's seeing opportunity and success. I love seeing things get built. So we
Yeah.
sold a company in the last couple of years, and in my mind, like we built it to the point where I knew how to build something, and then it was like, okay, now it's time to go back and build something again.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find the value in, because what you just said was actually multifaceted. It was, I love to build. And I was recognizing that maybe it could have been built differently or better or bigger or whatever from the moment, but that there was a recognition of like, I like this part of the building. So I'm a builder, but like, I like this area of building. Would you say that's true? And give us a little bit more detail there.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. I mean, everyone has different skill sets. Mine is being very gritty and really getting into the weeds and helping with the growth. I don't mind getting my hands dirty, that sort of thing. But, once you get to a certain threshold, you got to get other people in there to understand taking it from this mark to this mark.
Sure.
Yeah. And I feel like the beginning stages are the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you think it's fun because you're gritty.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, it can be super tough and it can be super overwhelming to people. I mean, you talk to some business owners and it's completely opposite. They're like, once we hit this threshold, I started having fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love seeing things grow, and I think that's it. Like I like to see the success of it. And obviously there's ups and downs in all businesses, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's fun. And
Yeah.
you have to take a little risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I relate to all that. And I know that many listeners do as well. But I want you, I'm sure you've probably thought about this, but I want what's the emotional piece to building for you? Like, okay, we get it. You're a builder.
Yeah.
Why though? Why get up every day other than to just like, I love it, right? Like, what's the love inside of it?
Yeah. Getting deep. I think it's not just about me. Like we have employees, we have customers. Like,
Yeah.
it's about the whole ecosystem. So I'm not just getting up to work for myself. I'm getting up to employ people. And
Right.
over the years, I've employed a lot of people,
Yeah.
and it's fun to see them grow as individuals. So it's seeing everybody evolve together as a company.
Yeah. I love that, man. I think that everybody can relate to that. For you, was there a moment in time that like it crossed over from, like you said, maybe building for yourself to the whole ecosystem?
I think I've always been pretty driven by helping others. So while yes, like financially in that realm for, making myself comfortable and working towards a goal, yes, but I've always wanted to bring people along, and I've been brought along in other businesses. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like, you give and people will give back.
totally. Yeah. There's a real law there. It's also too, like you mentioned it a few minutes ago, is that like, I'm not just doing this for myself, but underneath that, it's like, you realize that there's like weight of responsibility on those people, But what you just said on the tail there was actually, I get to collaborate. It's not like me providing for them, although there is a major layer there and there's huge responsibility there. But it's also like, it sounds like you've got a great team because you're getting as much value from them as you're giving to them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been in the restaurant industry, I've been in consumer packaged goods, and we have a roasting factory. So we have a manufacturing side. So I've worked with individuals of all different levels,
Right.
and everybody can provide value
Yeah.
as long as you're willing to accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to dig into some of that value and maybe even how you've been able to use your past experience. Give us a little bit of your road. Okay, so you're like you said, you're in this business now, but like, what was it? What was Craig like before now?
Yeah, I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. My brother and I, he's 2 years older than I am, so he was able to get a paper route at 9 years old,
Okay.
and I negotiated with him, and I was only 7, so I wasn't
Yeah.
allowed to technically have it. So we created a little secret secret
Little,
company within the
little
company,
entity,
a little
offshore accounts, I
entity.
assume as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what funded all my success.
That's right.
But, I always had that drive. Like, we had that company from the time I was 7 until the time I was 18 and went off to college. And growing up, like, I never wanted to sit still. Like, I had a landscaping business. I don't, back in the day when they played those slideshows and at like sporting
Yeah.
award ceremonies, like, I
Yeah.
create those. Like, I just find ways to make money and to be entrepreneurial, like, all throughout my childhood. And then, at college, I studied marketing and entrepreneurship. And then once I graduated, I went and worked for a corporate 500 company for a little bit and then moved out to San Diego and actually got involved in a restaurant group. Was involved in that restaurant group until 2012. And then I was pulled into another small mom and pop restaurant, took equity in that,
Okay.
and met my current business partner through that. We created
Nice.
a really, really nice bond. He's been a mentor to me. He's brought
Yeah.
me along, and he was actually the one who owned the coffee company before I got involved. So yeah, so I think that's where it's like you give and you get back, right?
That's
Like,
right.
I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't try all of these things and meet these
Yeah.
people along the way.
Yeah.
And, had trials and tribulations, and yeah. So
Well,
that's, and then we started, I guess, for the full journey through the coffee business, we started another bone broth company in 2015.
wow.
It was all powdered bone broth. And then we exited that in 2021. That company's still around, doing really well. I actually still advise on the Amazon front for them a little bit.
Nice.
But it opened up a lot of free time for me
Yeah.
to refocus on the coffee businesses, which over the
Yeah.
past year, that's really what I'm diving into and
Yeah.
focus on.
Yeah. I love all parts of that. I got to pull out one maybe odd question, but coming from a guy who's not college educated, I think I have a semester.
Hey,
I dropped out. I'm out.
yeah,
said,
it's not for everybody.
That's right. That's right. But I got to know because you studied marketing and entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and then eventually you became an entrepreneur. So I got to know, did you learn what it's like to actually be an entrepreneur in college, or was the actual entrepreneurship different?
It's a mindset. I don't think you can be taught entrepreneurship. I mean, there's risk involved in it.
Right.
You can only read so many textbooks, like, especially on the marketing front, right? Like,
Yeah.
the
You
marketing
can
books
only
I
listen to so
read,
many podcasts.
right? Exactly. And the marketing books I read back then probably are completely different now. But, I think the entrepreneurship was an amazing program because there weren't textbooks and it was very new back then. It was one of the first
Right.
programs in the nation. And it was like, how do you think outside the box, or like,
Right.
really creating, like, our capstone project was create a company. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
where do we begin?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess like I've just wondered, because college is very theoretical and books, and so
Yeah.
even what you've done here and shared with us sounds like they've try to use experience. And I don't want to make the podcast about college or educational purposes, but it's kind of why podcasts like this exist and lots of other business type of functions and events and coaching and groups like Gathering the Kings, all of that, because there's not really a manual.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and I think that's entrepreneurship, right? Like, it's like
That's right.
my manual would look very different than your manual. Like,
That's right.
and it's every
And I can
business
pick up things
is
from your
different.
manual and vice
Right.
versa.
And vice versa. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for e-commerce, I'm involved in a couple of different groups, and it's like everyone's always sharing these little nuggets of information, and
That's right.
it's like, great, we're collaborating. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's good
so
stuff. Good stuff. Okay. Sounds good. So you're a stud. Okay, fine. We get it. Thanks for sharing. I want to know in that journey, let's get into some nitty gritty. Give me a good decision that you've made, maybe with the exit, or maybe it's with the coffee now. What have you done looking back? It's like, I would do this over and over and over again.
I think the best decision is people, right? Like who you're working with, and that kind of goes on both of these answers because my first entrepreneurial experience out of college, I probably joined with the wrong people. And that's why I ultimately ended up leaving that group.
Sure.
But that's where I found my current business partner was after that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's making sure you mesh well with the people that you're working with and you kind of have the same vision and goal, but have different skill sets. You can't have the same
Yeah.
skill set as somebody else that you're trying to work with.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So if somebody is, considering a partnership or they're in a partnership and maybe they're even feeling like what you just said, like we have the same skill sets, we're not in alignment. Is there a
Mhm.
way to salvage that? Or is it more of a like, let's just recognize and move on? What would be your experience there?
I think you can definitely salvage it. I mean, you can always learn, right? Like, I'm fortunate that my current business partner, he is much more numbers oriented and he's on the finance and accounting side, and I'm much more operational and Amazon focused. So our relationship works very well from the start. Think where it is not salvageable is when you have very, very different ideas on where the company is going to go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that was where that was probably my biggest mistake because in the first company I was, because it was very sexy. It was very cool what we were doing and we were getting a
Yeah.
lot of press and it was great. But I was focused on we need to stop growing and we need to focus and really dial in our operations in this. And the other individual was completely opposite. It was like, no, I'm going to go sign leases. I'm going to do this. I'm doing
To the
this.
moon.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's like, well, that's great if you have a ton of financing, but we don't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think that there's, value alignment and then vision alignment. I think if there's value alignment, to your point, I'm just kind of maybe clarifying this for the listeners, that if you can take a look at your personal values, your family values, what your business values are, if you don't have them, you should have them. And if you align on those things, you could probably work out certain things. And if you have a certain skill set that's the same, it just means you need somebody else in the mix to kind of, you know,
yeah, I
mix it
completely
mix it
agree
up.
with that. It's not that you can't have the same skill sets, but there's got to be either some overlap or there's got to be something else or
Yeah,
bring somebody else in,
totally.
which you can always hire. So
Exactly.
but I also think to add to this whole question, the exits, while some people get like really, really excited about it, it is exciting to exit a company. And I wasn't
Yeah.
sure how I was going to feel when we exited. And we sold the restaurant in November and then we sold the bone broth company in October 2021. So it was like within a year span, we sold two
Mhm.
businesses.
Yeah.
Which there was a time where like I had a little identity crisis. Like it was like,
Yeah.
what do I do? And people would ask me, and we still have the coffee, tea, and spice company. So it's not like I didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
But people would come to me and be like, what are you gonna do now? Like, I'm like, I still have another company. Like,
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
but
Exactly.
it's interesting that kind of the roller coaster of emotions, but
Yeah.
the exits were they're probably the best thing that actually happened to me, especially from a lifestyle balance. And like
Okay.
I have a 13-month-old daughter. It
Yeah.
freed up a lot of time to spend with her, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's a big angle here. I'm gonna come back to that because I was just telling you actually before we hit the record button that we just got back from our family mastermind cruise. And there's this idea that a lot of entrepreneurs feel that they're like on an island and I'm like obsessed with my business and then like, my family, my wife, my kids, my fill in the blank.
Hmm.
But you can do it all. And so I'm going to ask you another question about that here in a little bit. But on the decision making, I just really appreciate your perspective there on alignment and giving the value piece, but also then like hey, like if it's just really not going to work, or if the values don't align, then we got to be able to move on. For you, it wasn't just moving on. It was I then met the people I was supposed to meet for my next venture, and then you even gave the description there of exiting in a healthy way. Like it wasn't like you had to, like it was a divorce. You sold a company. Congratulations, but you
Right.
still have that moment of like, oh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what now? So I'm excited. What is now? I know you have this other company, but like, what did you use in that moment to fuel forward?
You know, it's interesting because you really do go through an emotional shift, whether you share it with people or you don't share it with people. Like
Yeah.
it was three businesses running at the same time. And one, was a restaurant, one was brick and mortar and e-commerce. And then we have the coffee, which is wholesale and e-commerce. And it's like, so you're always moving in different directions. And
And
um,
then you weren't.
yeah, and I wasn't. And I didn't have people like asking me questions all the time. So
That's
it's like
right.
yeah, it's a huge shift. You're like, wait, like, is this someone supposed to text me or call me or ask me? And
That's
it
right.
was really redefining what I wanted,
Yeah.
which wasn't overnight. Like it took some time. And like, I was always saying before the sale, like or during the process, it's like, I'm gonna jump into coffee. I'm gonna get it back in. Like we're gonna focus on this because coffee was kind of on autopilot. Like we had the
Yep.
wholesale side, we had the Amazon piece, and it was
Yep.
just, growing slowly.
Plug and
But
play. Yeah.
yeah, we didn't have to do a lot. But the flip side of that is if I did spend some time on it, like we could see it go like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really resetting my priorities, but it was hard. Like you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't have any meetings today, or like, the water
Yeah.
heater isn't broken at the restaurant.
Right. Right.
uh,
Especially coming out of an industry like hospitality where there is just constant fires. It's interesting. I was I was in one of our roundtables just this last week, and this was a question that was asked. And so I'm going to use that question to ask you the same. The question that was asked was, are you, oh shoot, I'm going to mess it up. He said, are you okay with no longer being addicted to being needed? I'm
I
just like,
wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't. And that was the biggest shift, like, especially mentally.
right.
Now I am fine with it. And it's helped me a lot, right? Like, especially
Yeah.
with a new family, like
Yeah.
your priorities shift. And like, I knew they would shift, but I'm also very driven to succeed and for growth. But
That's right.
I'm reading a book right now and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it's about entrepreneurship and family. It's the
Well,
what is it? The family entrepreneur? Or I'll
okay.
have to look it up, but
Okay. Yeah.
I'll
Let's put it
share
in
it
the show
with you
notes.
so you can put it in the show notes. But it's really good because it was kind of like grow, 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 grow. And they were setting these false expectations or growth goals.
Yeah.
And eventually it was a family business. And eventually they just broke, right? And really stepped back and they're like, why are we creating these false goals? Like,
Yeah.
what are we happy with? Like, do we really need to grow double this year, 20% this year, or
Right.
can we just sustain where we're at? Which has a huge mind shift. Like, I
It
think in
is.
the US and probably worldwide, but like entrepreneurs, all you see in the headlines, right, is like, you need to grow, you need to grow, you need to grow, and
Right.
raise money and blah, blah, blah. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a smaller business, it's really looking to see what are you happy with and where do you need to be?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a the growth is always going to happen in some area. What you've described in that season for you, the growth wasn't necessarily in revenue, but the growth was individually. Your
Right.
identity, you were reinventing yourself, the way that you thought was changing. And so there's always growth. It's just a matter of where are we heightened with our attention to be able to, focus on whatever growth is applicable in that moment. I was just telling an entrepreneur just a couple days ago. It's like there's two seasons. There's like, okay, like think about like, okay, we're gathering the kings. Think about like wartime and kings. Like we got actual crowns and you got your army, I got mine. It's like there's like war season, right? Like we go out during war season to take ground and overtake the next town over and take their things and their farm ground and their oxen, cattle, and all the stuff, right? But if I'm always in wartime, if I'm always trying to expand and never cultivating what I took, then eventually supplies run out, resources dry up, the ground that we took is no longer valuable because we didn't pay attention, we didn't cultivate it. And so there's this season of back and forth, which you gave a beautiful word picture of, there of being able to navigate the emotion piece of it, but it's real, 100% real, right?
Right. I mean, the emotional roller coaster you go through, and I do some breath work, which helps me get through just the thought process of it. I listened to a podcast last night. It was a lady who sold her business after I don't know how many years, but she decided she wanted to retire, and kind of went through the same thing. Like she had an identity crisis. Like when people like you or I asked her, it was like, "Well, what do you do?" We're like, "What do you do?" She can't say, "Well, I'm retired." To us,
Right.
but
Right.
so it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
interesting
you're
how
right, the
we
identity.
how we think it has to be.
Where we have these constructs or these belief frames that were given to us by somebody else, most likely, or we just conjured them up ourselves, but many of them aren't actually true. It's just what our current belief is, our current enlightenment, you know?
Right.
I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing maybe the difficulty of that time. I think it's, whether the listener has exited and has had that moment or not, the reality is that it's not just machine work. It's not like just as a successful entrepreneur, it's numbers and sales and growth and push, push, push. Although there's a lot of that regarding mindset, but also the flip side of that, the mindset is when it's stressful or when it's unknown or when you're reinventing yourself, sometimes it takes quiet breath work to
Right.
get through it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Okay, tell us about a bad decision, something that it was just not your hottest hour.
Oh man, I'm sure I've got so many, but I think the biggest thing, my worst decision goes back to that first company that I was a part of.
Okay.
It was there were times where I just went along with the ride and let
Sure.
some of the decisions happen where I shouldn't have. And I could have probably seen the writing on the wall a little bit sooner
Okay.
than I did, and I got sued by like at 29, which isn't, it's like, oh, well, crap. Like but it was a learning experience. And it's like, all
Yeah.
right, well, we go through that. It's a life experience, but on the flip side of that, as you guys know, like that's where I met my next business partner, and I've been
Yeah.
business partners with him since 2012. So I think with bad decisions, as long as you handle it properly, good things can come out
Yeah.
of that, and it's a good learning experience.
Yeah. I right before we hit the record button, we were talking about a couple of different things, but one of the things that you and I were mentioning was just that, if you do good things long enough, we were talking about podcasting and YouTube and content and stuff, and you do good things with good intentions in a consistent way for a long enough period of time. In essence, you've planted good seeds and a good harvest will come up. And so that's in essence what I'm hearing you say is that even though it was a bad choice of maybe partnering with this individual or maybe not aligning yourself with the right person, you were doing good things for a consistent period of time. And so even though this one little snippet of time wasn't the harvest came later, which it always does. It always, always, always
Right.
does. And so now you've been enjoying not necessarily easy harvest, but you've been enjoying a great partnership with somebody that you met through a tough circumstance, right?
Absolutely.
What would you say to the guy listening right now who's maybe in the thick of a bad decision? Like you said, okay, I realize now that maybe I should have paid attention. There were some decisions being made. Maybe I shouldn't have been drug along. Like going back to you in that moment, that guy's listening right now. What do you tell him? Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolf. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow.
Talk to other people. I think that like I harnessed a lot of it myself, and on the outside, everything looked rosy and it looked like everything, with the relationship was good.
Right. That ego blinding you think? Or was that just like keeping
Yeah,
up to
of
the
course.
Jones
I
type
mean,
feeling?
a little bit. I think it's a little bit of a mixture.
Yeah.
I think one, it's not understanding how to be vulnerable. I mean, I was in
Oh,
my
right.
early 20s,
Yeah,
now
it's good.
in my late 30s, and I've learned like you can talk to people and other people have gone through it as well. So
That's right.
ask questions and, if you're not sure, ask people. Like it doesn't have to, you don't have to ask your business partner, but ask other people that you trust and you can talk to about it.
Yeah. And ideally, you do trust your business partner, but in this
Well, yeah,
case, you
yeah. I was
don't.
saying that, yeah, yeah. I'm always saying like in the bad decision area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
with you. I just had to make a little poke there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I talk to my business partner all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that point of vulnerability is right. And it's also, you gave a huge little piece there of like being just youthful and not really understanding the value of vulnerability or sharing or asking for help, raising a hand. I think that's what actually keeps entrepreneurs stuck for so long. Even if they're not stuck and they're having success, what happens is eventually, and maybe you can relate to this, is that you isolate yourself. The lonely at the top feeling. And so, okay, so I've accomplished all this stuff and I'm in my 20s or whatever, but I'm all by myself, basically. I might even be surrounded by a bunch of people, team members, family members, whatever, but really in my mind, at the level of decision making that I'm at, I'm by myself because I haven't been vulnerable. I
Right.
haven't asked for help. I haven't joined, a group like you said of ecom business owners where I can,
Yeah.
go back and forth. What would you say to that guy who's like isolated and all by himself?
Join groups. I mean, this can go back to after we sold the companies. There were lonely points because it was like you're not needed anymore
Yeah.
every day. So that's actually when, I was a part of other groups, but there's a couple other econ focus groups that I joined. And it's like, whether it's Slack or whether it's, work groups, or like now we have a contingency of probably 25 to 50 econ business owners that try to get together once a month for breakfast or lunch. Or last night we had a happy hour, and
That's cool.
it's create a community because
Yeah.
you can't do it alone and you're going to be lonely. Like a lot of entrepreneurship, you know, what we see in the press is not necessarily entrepreneurship. Like there's a lot
Right.
of businesses that are one-man businesses, two-man
That's right.
businesses,
That's right.
and that can be very lonely. So like build your network outside of your business, whether it's friends, family, or econ groups or masterminds.
Yep. Yeah, they're all available. Okay, I wanna switch over here. I wanna get to our speed round, ask you some kind of not related at all practical questions.
Yeah.
In this e-com space, this coffee space, tea space, what's the number one KPI? If you could only pick one forever and ever to track, what would you track?
That is tough. I think it's lifetime value,
Okay.
especially for coffee, because coffee is such a subscribe and save product. And I know that does not
Right.
go across the entire ecom business, but I have customers that have been with me for 11 years and like they have my
Wow.
cell phone number. So it's like if they
Wow.
need something, they can call me. So that says a lot. Like obviously
Yeah.
there's all these KPIs, whether it's marketing or growth or whatever that you can do. But I
Yeah.
think the one that probably makes me feel the best or validate the business is the lifetime of the customer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in knowing what that value is. It also speaks to a lot of other things going on in the business. So I think that's a good one. Good choice. What about a business resource? Podcast, you said you listen to those often. Maybe it's a book that you've read, something that you can share that we can go pick up and get some value from.
Yeah. So there's two groups that I'm involved in. Both are for 7 and 8 and larger figure brands. They're both e-commerce focused. One is e-commerce fuel, great network. And there's people who have been in e-com since e-com was born. So there's people who have seen every aspect.
That's
So I
awesome.
love that group for that. The other one that just started probably within the last 6 months to a year is Workspace Six. It's
Okay.
a Slack group,
Yeah.
and it's awesome. And that's actually where I was talking about the happy hour last night and breakfast and stuff. Like it's a
Yeah.
group. There's people worldwide, but they've also created city segments.
Sure.
So now it's helped us build that community. And, some of us compete, some of us are in different businesses, but it's all relative and we can all share similar stories and
Right.
help each other out.
Yeah. You just dropped several very easy on ramps that we could probably spend multiple podcasts on, but I want to try to pick at least one or two of them. You said that, well, I heard you say number one, that you're in two groups. So there's people listening right now that aren't in any sort of connection or community or mastermind or trade specific type of group. What would you say to that person? And then the second thing I heard you say was that you've gotten value so much so to where you're collaborating with competitors. And so
Mhm.
is that okay? Aren't they robbing your secrets? I mean, I know they're not, but like give us your thoughts there. So what would you say to the guy that's not part of anything? And then my second question about the competitors.
Yeah, to the first part, if you're not involved, get involved. It doesn't matter what you join. It can be industry specific or it can be larger, right? Like it
Yeah.
can,
It could be
or you
gathering the
can,
kings. No, I'm just kidding.
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. It could be gathering the kings,
I
right?
wasn't
But
I
it's
wasn't I had to steal the moment, but keep going.
absolutely. But no, it's true. It's like just join something because you're going to have
Yeah.
questions. And if you don't ask them, you're not going to continue to grow, whether it's personal or
Yeah.
business.
Exactly.
And then what was the second piece?
The your competitors
Oh,
aren't they
right.
stealing from you in the groups? Come on, crap.
I mean, there's no secrets in ecom. I think there's
Aren't there
obviously
no
things.
secrets in business?
That's true too.
Right? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we think that they're secrets. It's just things that we just don't know yet. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. Hide your recipes. Don't give your recipes away. But I talked to somebody the other day, and I've worked on Amazon since 2012. But I was like, hey, do you mind sharing your launch guide so I can see how you do it? And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, here you go. It's sharing because the world's big enough for all of us to succeed. So and there's actually a competitor that I'm looking at collaborating with to a standpoint, like he needs help
Interesting.
roasting some coffee. I'm like, all right, well, I'll roast it for you. Like,
Right.
so I don't know, you can be friendly competitors.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you've kind of scratched a little section. I mean, we always hear about, the big business owners and they're cutthroat, and you watch a movie, like Founder about, Ray Kroc and how he cut off the McDonald's brothers. And what I have found actually is that the bigger the business owners, typically, not always, but typically the more success that someone has, the more willing they are to share or to slow down
Oh,
and give you secrets.
yeah, I'd agree on that wholeheartedly. I mean, you look at some of these groups and the people who respond to questions more often than not are the larger businesses.
Yeah.
And
When
they have more
when they
they
don't
have
need
more
to.
resources too. Right, when they don't need to, and they have more resources, right? Like
Yeah.
if they don't know the answer, they can go to whoever runs that department to understand like what the answer is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Okay, let's get to that family question I was telling you about. I kind of
Yeah.
hinted at my beliefs earlier, but the word balance is not in my vocabulary. And what I am a friend of is obsession. And I know that I've been successful in business because of my obsession and my extreme devotion. That's the definition of obsession. And so what I'm trying to do is apply that same extreme devotion to my marriage, to my children, to my everything else. What would you say that you've done alongside of all the things that you've got going on to be obsessed in those areas also?
I think it's a work in progress.
Amen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not the best at it. I try to be.
Yeah.
And I want to be obsessed with it. I want to be there all the time. And like as my daughter and, future kids grow, I want to be at every soccer game or every baseball game or whatever it is and give them the same devotion that I have given to business.
Right. Right.
But it's a big mind shift. Like, have I done great over the last 13 months? Yeah, I think so. Like I'm there a lot, but could I do better at some things? Yeah,
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no one's perfect. But I think in the last month, talking to other entrepreneurs and or people in corporate America, like I feel like there's some sort of shift going on where it's like family is just as important, if not more important than your
Right.
business. So
Yeah.
I hope that people can understand that because without your family, you really don't have anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the old school, grind because we have to, think about our generation, the generations ahead of time, the boomers, and then before that it was basically the depression. And so it's
Right.
like, okay, well, there was real survival like here. Like we need to like buckle down, and in order for there to even be a family, grandchildren and
Right.
so forth, rent, food on the table, we have to like really, really, pay the price here. And so yeah, you're right. I think that we are reaping a lot of that reward now. And so it doesn't have to be we have to XYZ to be able to get, the same result. And on top of that, technology has allowed us to have leverage. And so that's probably the biggest point there is
Mhm.
you can still have an incredible ecom business and make probably 10 times as much money as if you didn't know that style of business, but you're just pulling a bigger lever, making more money with less time.
Right.
So for the entrepreneurs that right now are maybe getting started, they haven't been able to like really pull the lever of, there's leverage in building a team. There's leverage in duplicating yourself through that team. There's leverage in knowing how to operate your time. There's leverage in resources, having money to put into effect, whether that's in other investments or investing in your business. If that guy's not there yet, what do you tell that guy to do?
Well, that's hard because we've all been in that situation. Or you and I have been in that situation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There is a component of grinding, and you have
That's how you started
to,
this podcast.
right? Yeah, right. And you have to give what it takes, but don't let that pigeonhole you, because I think that actually ties into loneliness, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you don't make time for yourself or your family or your friends, you're going to be miserable and
Right.
you're not going to be successful. Like, you need to step back at times. I listened to a podcast yesterday that was saying that, forget if it was a lady or the host, but they were saying that now they try to get off at 4 and they end their day at 4 every day, or at least a couple of days a week, because the incremental free time that gives them to spend with their family is
Makes you more
invaluable.
productive.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's an understanding there of even just mental health. I think that category opens us up to a bunch of things that probably I'm not in alignment with. However, here's what I mean is that you have to fight for mental space as an entrepreneur, really as people, but as entrepreneurs. And so like having think time on the calendar and being able to step away out of my office environment and put like high level thought towards my business or my family or whatever it looks like, that's the space that we've got to create that you're talking about, really.
yeah.
And what that does, even for someone who works for us, is it gives them the ability to come back tomorrow at 100x, because not only do we care, but then also in addition, they're just better as a
Yeah.
person and in their mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think to that guy or gal that we're talking to, right? Like, listen to people that you trust and don't listen to everything else you hear in the media about entrepreneurship or business or anything. Like, there's a lot of saying, like, don't work in the business, work on the business. And it's
That's
like,
right.
well, there's truth to it, but there's also a time period where you do need to work in the business.
Yep.
And it's going to happen more often than not. But you're going to read
Yeah.
these books that tell you not to, and articles that say not to. And it's like,
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to do what's necessary.
exactly.
Yeah. I think that it's super, super healthy to have that perspective, because I'm not only in agreement with you, I've done these things because, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to start from the top and build the company down, and I'm going to pick my number 2, and I'm going to pick my leadership team. And you can do all that pre-revenue if you have resources.
Right.
And if you don't, that's okay. You got to start the business, and you got to figure out how to go get the client. And then you got to service the client, whatever your product or service is. And then once some revenue comes in, the resource, then you can start maybe putting some pieces of the puzzle in place. But there's going to take just a moment in time and maybe that's 2 weeks, maybe that's 2 years. I don't know. But I
Yeah.
think that once you know some of these things, the puzzle can actually be put together quite a bit faster, but it's still the same pieces.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I also think one thing that I did not adhere to, which is probably a bad decision of mine at one point, was make sure you're paying yourself some sort of wage, because
Yeah.
most entrepreneurs will put other people first or try to grow their teams before they're ready to, or or they're not paying themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. There's an angle there for sure. For the listener who's not paying themselves, but there's money there. Like, there's a difference between like early stages, there's no money, I'm grinding, I'm delaying gratification. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you have a business and there is money, but you're not paying yourself a salary for what it is, the work that you're doing. But you are paying someone else a salary. And that's like, okay, well, wait a second. You're the owner, you're doing work, but then there's ownership. So there's a whole nother mindset there around how the business is structured and how things are paid. But that's a great point. I'm so interested now because of your perspective of exiting on what you're going to say. My question is this: if you had the opportunity to whisper in the younger Craig's ear, what would you say?
Wow. It's a good one. Probably believe
Believe what?
because, well, I think, there's a lot of people who tell you you can't do it. There's a lot of people who tell you this isn't going to work. Or like when I was having that issue in the first company, like
Mm-hmm.
family was there, but other people were like, why are you doing this? Like, why would you leave? Like, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you feel it, really just believe in your gut and believe in yourself that you're going to make the right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. That, if I had to boil all success down to one thing, I think that would be it. In all
I picked the
seriousness.
right answer. Yeah. No.
Well, the answer, I mean, yeah, I guess I would probably be of similar mind, is what I'm saying. The
Mhm.
answer could be whatever you want. I actually, it's funny. I'll say this for the first time on the air, but one of my team members, who's part of the production team, she was like, "Hey, I've heard you ask a similar question like this, like a lot of times. What's your answer?" I'm like, "Buy Bitcoin, buy Apple, buy." She was like, "No,
Right.
no. What's the real answer?" I'm like, "Okay."
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think you gave a great job there of helping us understand what the real meaning of it is, and it really is belief, because belief then spurs into the decision, which then spurs into persistence, which then spurs in, all the things that you've done after all that to then have the success that you've had. So all you can't have any of that without first having that conviction or the belief that you had in yourself. So I appreciate you sharing. Craig, okay, a couple things. I need to know how to find your coffee and your tea and anything else that you're associated to. I need to know how to find you, because maybe I'm listening right now and I want to connect with Craig and I think he's a cool guy. How can we find you?
Yeah, super easy. So my email is craig@craigleslie.com. Feel free to reach out to me there. LinkedIn, it's just Craig Leslie. And then the coffee websites are sandiegocoffee.com. That one should be pretty easy. And then the other one is thebeancoffeecompany.com. And then we also have a very, very small brand, but in my opinion, some of the best spice blends in the world. It's called
Okay.
Lux Spice. That one you can get on Amazon. So,
Okay.
and
Lux
then
Spice.
go and support my past company, Lono Life, which is powdered bone broth. So yeah,
There you
lots
go.
of lots of stuff you can eat and drink.
I was gonna say lots of consumables. You might just get us hooked. I don't know. Maybe we'll be on a subscription.
There we go. That's ideal.
That's
Lifetime
ideal.
value.
That's right. I was gonna say you already said it, so I appreciate that. Craig, you've been incredible, man. I love your story. I love your vulnerability, just sharing some of those moments there, success and failure. But I'm glad that I personally know you, and I'm thankful that you were here to share some value. We wish you nothing but blessing and success in all that you have your hands to, and probably all the new other things that eventually you'll end up doing at
Yeah,
another
one
point in
day.
your life. So, yeah, one
But
day. I
Chaz,
appreciate you being here.
yeah, Chaz, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.